Hello and welcome to Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is March 26th, 2024, and we are staring at charts yet again, taking a look at Bitcoin on the daily to start here. And we can see that Bitcoin has maintained now two closures above the $69,000 previous all-time high coming in from November of 2021. Now, as I stated in my last live stream, I need to see Bitcoin get above this area here, this close open at $72,000 to start looking for it to run its highs up here on a close at around 73,135 and the wick high coming in just shy of $74,000. Now you can see if Bitcoin does trade above the upper first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here, which is coming in now at 71,123, then I would be looking for that area to get ran somewhere around 72 to 73,000. If it does get above the wick high here, in order to get expansion, we do need to see daily closures above the upper second standard deviation. As it stands right now, Bitcoin is in a bit of a range, and I'm going to explain a few possible scenarios to look out for here. But if Bitcoin does start closing back above the highs here, obviously that would be a breakout above the prior all-time high. But it still needs to get above and close above the upper second standard deviation to kick off re-expansion. In this case, that's now coming in at $74,000. And above there, I would be looking somewhere around $75,000 to $78,000 roughly, and possibly above there, 78 to 80, and then into the low 80s initially. And that is only conditional. And that does mean that Bitcoin would need to close above $75,000 to really start pushing that $78,000 target and above there to 80 and the low 80,000. So that's conditional based on a daily closing high or daily closing structure. In this case, Bitcoin's just kind of hanging out. The longer it consolidates above the prior all-time high, the better, especially if we do start to see a weekly closure up here. Now, on the other side of that, downside areas to be aware of, Bitcoin looking just fine, above $69,000 to around $68,000 by the daily basis band. So that hasn't changed much since yesterday's live stream. Below there, and I would look right back to the lower first, around the bottom side of the all-time high zone here coming in at $65,000. So that's around $65,355 to $65,000 below there. And I would be looking right back to this prior higher low here on the daily, somewhere around the wicks there by the lower second at 62 to 62,500. If we did see that area lost, I would be looking for expansion right down into this monthly support. This is the closing all-time high support zone. That was the closing swing high of the all-time high area there, coming in from October of 2021 to the prior closing swing high area at, now this was the closing high with the swing high was at $65,000 for the March of 2021 closing highs. And the October into November closing high was coming in at 61,350, where that swing high came in at $69,000. So in this case, I would be looking for expansion on any closures below the lower second standard deviation into this support zone again, somewhere around that 61,350 to that 58.8. Now, if we did see that area break down, well, then I would be looking for quite a bit more downside than I think many would expect. Many are still looking on any failures to break the current all-time high at around 73,800 to 74K. They're still looking around 57 to 56K or so. I would actually be looking at any kind of a breach on the daily and or higher term timeframes below 58.8 as likely targeting a retest of this weekly zone around $53,000 to this weekly. This was a swing high actually from September of 2021. And then down below there, the main area that I would be looking at would be this daily consolidation that occurred around the historical weeklies here from August rather of 2021 to December of 2021 down here. These were two big weekly swing zones on a closing basis. So, and this area did not get retested, but one thing that we do have to be aware of in this particular bull market and bull cycle on the way up, through all of these different supports as Bitcoin has passed them, it's typically rather been retesting the monthlies. Um, that would be a pretty darn big move down there. It's not my first take on what's going on here. Bitcoin is playing above the prior cycle all-time high here. So, although we need to be aware of that downside scenario, it is more likely that the longer that it hangs out above $69,000 and even above 68, it can dip down into this liquid zone here around the prior all-time highs, 65 to 69. But, the longer it hangs out up here, the more likely it is going to start looking more and more like it wants to keep trying for this all-time high and higher. Doesn't mean it's going to happen immediately. I would give it a little bit of time here. Being above the basis band of the Bollinger Bands here means that it's in the strong half of the bands, and might just need a little goosing to get going here over the course of the next few days, maybe a week and a half, coming into the early part of April. It would be pretty funny if it had an April Fool's rally up to some of those deeper targets. That would be pretty fitting for Bitcoin. Now we can see that the Stochastic momentum indicator is showing us that the momentum pivot actually went down. Now in yesterday's live stream, this was more around 65, almost $66,000. But because it is playing catch up, this reads close over close price momentum, right? So we had the initial move down, a nice move back up to the basis, and then a move back down into higher low fashion here, or higher low structure, I should say. And in this case, it's reading some of the additional move down to this prior low area around 64,300. So that is this low right here. So as long as Bitcoin, at least for this today's daily candle, which is the Wednesday candle, I am recording this on Tuesday. We get the close open here in the evening for me. So this candle is living in the future. But in this case, as long as the Wednesday candle is closing above anywhere above 64,320 or so, it is pressure to the upside. We pointed this out the other day, but there's hidden bullish divergence here coming from the prior structure at $50,000, and even below there, it would have gotten bullish divergence either way, wherever it put a low in from the $40,000 area. So it was looking more bouncy than not. It was just a matter of how far does the pullback go. Now, when looking at something like the weekly, I do want to point this out. On the weekly time frame, Bitcoin has tested the upper second standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here. Now it's got a nice swing high and swing low structure. If it does close anywhere above $69,000 here, it will put in a closing low as well. So you'd have the swing high, no real high put in on a close, but it would be a swing high to swing low with a closing low set upon any closures above $69,000. So if it does meet that criteria by Sunday and you don't watch my live streams or you don't watch any more of my videos that are recorded, just understand above 69K on the weekly, looking pretty darn good for further upside. And you can see that if Bitcoin did fall back down and breach below $65,000 here on any kind of a weekly time frame, we have the upper first standard deviation coming right in here in that monthly zone. Now this being that monthly closing all-time high zone between 61,350 and 58,800, with the upper first coming in there at 60,500 or so. So that would essentially paint the picture that if Bitcoin did fail here, come back down, lose 65K on the daily, where would I be looking? Well, I'd be looking right around these lows again, somewhere around these lows, around 60K. Realistically, if it breaches 60K, it could even run this wick low and the zone, but as long as it's closing anywhere above 58.8 to 60K, it's looking really strong and more like a longer form consolidation. As it stands right now, we like to see strong half consolidations on the bands for the daily. In the context of the weekly, this is beautiful. It's a move still ongoing. When looking at RSI, I didn't mention this recently in any of my streams or recorded videos, but there's no bearish divergence on the weekly, and that's kind of the first thing that I look for in terms of like a major prolonged correction. And we like things to happen really quickly in crypto, and this is kind of it's taking its time sitting around the all-time high zone or the prior cycle all-time high zone. That's not unexpected. It's actually been a pretty quick move up. When Bitcoin consolidates, it's going to start really blasting off in the expansion phase on the daily. Now, I will say that I do think things will be somewhat capped, at least for this week, if we do see a move to the all-time high and higher at around that 73,800. I do think things would possibly cap in around that $83,000. That is the weekly upper third. Doesn't mean it will. Could see wicks through it into the mid 80s. But of course, it has to meet some of the criteria that we just talked about. And because we do have a swing structure in, let me go ahead and take support and resistance off here. Because we do have solid swing structure in. We have a swing high. We've got a swing low. We can actually take a fib measurement on this particular swing structure, and we can see that, even deeper than the one spot here, if we did see the weekly breakout above there, we have that 1272 coming in at 88, 1414, 1414. Yeah, I said that right. Around 96. We got the 1618 coming in there around $110,000. Now, there is probably a little bit more accurate fib that can be pulled off of this, and that would be the prior swing structure from swing high, because there was a nice swing high to swing low structure here, and this guy down here from the $25,000 area. I think the low was at 24,900 or something. We can get a little bit more relevant targets that are just overhead from that structure to kind of gauge this move, because Bitcoin is above the 100%, or this wick over here coming in at around $50,000. Go figure. That's right where the weekly basis band is coming in as well. That being above this breakout area is really what you want to see. There was also that beautiful spike down directly into the monthly, nearly to the dollar at 38,500. I think it missed it by like $1. Exactly. It was 38,501. But in this case, holding above the 1272 from that particular fib pull, very, very strong. That just so happens to come in right at the bottom side monthly that we were just looking at, $58,800 to $59,000. Give or take a couple $100 for the fib here. It's at 59,000. The monthly support is at 58,800. Perfect structure with the fib. We have the 1414 here at $65,000, which is the actual first all-time high from 2021 on a swing, a wick, or a shadow, whatever you'd like to call it. And in this case, trading above there is going to target the 1618, which also happens to be the upper second standard deviation on the daily. So if we go ahead and flip this over to a daily, we can see that that's just about in line with the upper second standard deviation here. So that $74,000 area above there, then we can start looking at, hey, guess what? 83. It's 83, almost $84,000. So, above 75, 74 to 75, I'm looking in the 75 to 78 zone. From there, we can start gauging continuation into the $80,000 to $83,000 area, and then possibly 83.5 or so. I almost made it without coughing. My apologies. For those that know my recordings and videos well, I make it almost all the way through without coughing or losing my voice. And then I start to cough and lose my voice. So let's wrap this up real quick here. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of a daily swing structure move fib going here. So we have swing high to swing low. We will take the wick on this. Yes, this is not like the preferred fib, but we can we'll line this up with some of my targets for the local structure. Mainly because from the wick down, or the swing low, to the swing high up here, we had a retracement that sat right on the 191. That's basically, it could be a 192 if you really want. That's basically the inverted 888 up here. Sat right on it on a close. It did fail on the way down when it did hit the 382. It bounced to the 618 here, and then failed, and then came back down and ran the 272 and 382 again. moved up to the basis, which was in line with that 618, came right up, tapped on the 786, and has not passed it just yet. 888 also happens to fall right at my number that I'm looking for a close. At minimum, a medium term time frame closure like a 4 or 6 hour above $72,000, and I do believe Bitcoin will run up to test this high at 73,800. Above there, and getting expansion above $74,000 at the upper second standard deviation would be targeting somewhere around $75,000 to $76,000 initially by the daily upper third to that 1272, so 75 to 78. Above there, we start looking to the 1414, which is at $80,000, almost $81,000. And then above there, we can start targeting mid, like $83,000 to $84,000, maybe mid $80,000 and above at the 1618. So you can see how these confluences kind of line up. The other thing that I'll leave you with here is, we'll keep track of this in tomorrow's live stream, and then on Fridays, or no, tomorrow is Wednesday, which is a live stream. Thursday's recorded video, and then Friday's live stream, we'll check up on this again. But the momentum pivot for the weekly is a weekly closure above 71,635. $72,000 would meet that criteria, and I believe that even a closure above $69,000, we're likely to see that also meet the criteria for at least a Stoke turn in the next weekly. You do need to see close over close momentum shift, and that would likely happen at least, maybe not this week, but at least at the end of next week, if Bitcoin can maintain closures above $69,000 on the weekly, and especially above 72K, then we're looking at this thing probably taking off to test further up. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all for hanging out with me. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. And with all of that being said, Landy out.